Hello, Jayden. Hello. Well, that
Hello.
was an epic video. I always get a little bit excited when I play that.
Ooh.
So welcome, everybody. I'm Tara. I'm the co-founder of D&D in a Castle, and today it's my pleasure to welcome Jayden King, one of our epic dungeon masters from D&D in a Castle, who's going to be running a 3 to 4-day game for up to 6 players at our upcoming D&D in a Castle event at Mohican Castle, USA, August 11 to 15. So, Jay, welcome. Hello.
Hello. I'm here. I made it.
You made it. It's so nice to see you. So nice to see you. I want to start by saying we're particularly excited to have you right now because this weekend we just aired our very first ever actual play from the castle to introduce the public to our dungeon masters and show their skill on screen. And especially, you can view it now if you click the link below. There's a QR code there if you want to see the actual play. And the actual play was dungeon mastered by the master of the dungeon, the one and only Jayden King, who is here with us today. So, Jay, tell us a little bit about the actual play, how it happened, and what it was like.
Oh, so that one was fun because we had the idea, right? It was presented to the dungeon masters to have this actual play at the castle, and I was given the opportunity to try and run something. And at the time, right, it was the 50-year anniversary experience of Dungeons and Dragons, and I was trying to figure out what was the best story to tell. And I'm a huge fan of epic adventure storytelling, but also I felt like it was important to have a bit of the whimsical nature. So a heavy inspirations of Guardians of the Galaxy went into making this adventure, which is Guardians of the Gate, where the adventurers would be a ragtag group of individuals who are heroes that nobody wants to hire, but they get the job done, even if it's a messy experience. And working a lot with a lot of the table terrain we had helped me put the pieces together. The story was built a lot on making sure that I can show the dungeon masters and more so the players, technically, their ability to shine as the way I tell my tables. But I wanted this epic combat. I wanted to explore familiar environment, but I wanted everyone to feel that they can be grand adventurers while also having a sense of wonder and comedic energy, which I think delivered quite well with those fantastic players, the environment, and having such I would say, the ambiance of the castle. Every table I run in any capacity is just enhanced. And I think the actual play had a lot of that energy to show that gravitas of just wonder.
That's awesome. Yeah, because usually, I mean, something that is different about D&D in the Castle, it's not an actual play. We're not a streaming company. We don't, produce content that way. We create live in-person games. And so the goal of putting on this actual play was just to kind of showcase the talent that we have at our castle, as well as the venue that we have, this beautiful space for gaming and the sort of quality of the people that people can game with. So but what was it like running for, like, those guys are, and you included, have all been DMing at the castle for some time repeatedly, and yourself as well. So what was it like having those DMs as players?
I will say there was a bit of an intimidation factor because I was going to run for people who have been running for a long time, but also I've seen how they run games because most of them have been on actual plays as players or dungeon masters. I've shared experiences, conversations, and we always talk in the back about how we run our tables. So like they know a lot of my tricks to run my tables. So it was like I wanted to bring something they haven't heard me do before. But I think it was one of those, the nerves are with every table I run, no matter how many. I've have a long-term campaign that every session my heart drops a beat because I'm like, here we go. But it felt like every game I run, it felt so familiar almost immediately. Like we went through our introductions because it's important to know who we are as players and characters. And then it just went smooth. Like everyone got into character, everyone kind of figured out who they wanted to be. And it just felt like was playing with friends that I've known quite some time, which for some of them I've known multiple times from the castle. And some of them I've only met that one time, but we were like friends who've been playing for years, just going straight into it. And I think that was the beautiful part. It's like I extended my D&D family a little bit more that day with those wonderful players in Dungeon Masters.
That's lovely, and all such experienced players that really know how to make the most of a game. I did want to say I see someone saying, "Hail to the king! Jay is epic." Indeed, Jay is epic, and hail to the king. If you have any questions for Jay or for me about D&D in the Castle, about the live actual play stream, or about Jay's campaign specifically, or the castle, drop them in the comments, and we'll address them. So speaking of that. Some comments about the coffee. Well, we're coming to the USA, and we literally just had a conversation this morning about how we're going to go in search of epic coffee if we are not met with the greatest coffee at the castle. So you have that from me. I will make you your own. I will make you a cup of coffee myself if that's what it comes down to. I'm committed. So with this castle coming up in the US, let's talk about that a little bit. So D&D in the Castle USA for the first time this summer. You're going to be at the August 11 to 15 round. So that's 4 days in a fantasy castle. What are you looking forward to about that?
Partially, it's a new castle for me. As a king, I should be in more castles anyway, but I've been to Lumley enough times that I've become what I feel like acquainted with the structure and the vibe and the location. I'm excited to be in a new environment and a new area, and I feel that there's something enjoyable about knowing that we're in a castle in the States that brings like a strange sense of like comfort and like like this home nature, because it's like I don't have to travel across the pond. It's just a few states over from me, and it's exciting to be in a place like that that's new. I know it's a slightly different environment and where it's at too, so I'm gonna have a different experience going into it. And I don't there's so many new things I think that comes with a castle in the States that I'm like excited to explore, to get my ambiance right, to figure out the type of room I want to work with, and just to kind of explore the immediate area. Usually castle grounds at Lumley have made me so engrossed in the nearby forest, the fields, and just this structure. And to see another location, I think it'll be wonderful just being there and seeing it.
And what have you got planned for your players? Tell us about the game you're planning for your players in August.
So this one, so I have a standard setting I like to run for the castle. It is my deep breath. It is a urban fantasy or contemporary fantasy setting in which magic and technology share in the world together. I run it in different areas, but it's always the same setting. Magic and technology 100 years ago clashed, and now they've had 100 years to find a way to blend and merge, though not seamlessly. People have cell phones, they have a version of the intranet, cars, but also wizard robes and slinging fireballs are all the same. And so the players have been working through seeing the environment, figuring out where they fit, what kind of neighborhoods they want to live in, whether or not it's the suburbs, downtown, the rural areas, the mountains, maybe have a beachfront property if that's their choice. And then we are going to slowly be working through where their lives have been for the last few weeks. Leading up to the castle, I tend to have them have prompts to explain what they've been doing. It's the weekend. What are they doing? Do they see concerts? To get them so engrossed in the environment so that when they start at the table, their characters become an extension of themselves, and they know this history, the personality, the likes, the dislikes, the wants and needs before things, well, change. For them, it depends on how much. I can't say too much because I don't want to spoil the specific surprise. But people who have played at my table know that I always have a major twist that can change their character's very foundation of their lives. But every table is always distinctly crafted with their backstory fabricated within the realm of what is possible. Oh, and anime epicness, because I've been looking at some specific anime characters to bring into my setting, including I've got some references to Super Saiyan, to the One Wing Angel from Final Fantasy, and a few Jujutsu sorcerers to bring in things. So for those that know anime, those references, you know what's happening.
So in terms of it sounds like, well, I know you do like this urban fantasy anime inspired, very cool. And I know you're really into epic high level combat. I know that's kind of your jam. In terms of the story of the scenario, the quest, is this going to be like a save the world quest? Is this going to be like a fight? Without giving it away, but just like the initial kickoff that could, The
So
initial sort of draw. What's the hook? What's the draw for this campaign?
so I will say what has
Tagline,
happened
ultimately.
before. Um,
Mhm.
Previously, I've done the dragons have been they 100 years ago, the dragons disappeared, and one day they all appeared angry that they have been ignored. So they had to deal with a dragon war in the middle of a downtown city, which is great. When you go to the mall, you got to fight a dragon. Another one, they had the child of the Grim Reaper and the Sister of Fate had a daughter that unfortunately brought about the apocalypse, and they had to deal with that. Another one, they ended up waking up the very heart of the planet, and part of it was coming up to destroy the city. And another one was another planet was on its way to descend upon and a la meteor, and they had to deal with preparing the defenses. There is an essence of save the world, but it's more so an essence of your life may change and you don't know which way. I look at apocalyptic situations from
Mhm.
plague,
Mhm.
famine, destruction, war, interplanetary forces, interdimensional portals. The thing is, I like saying it's just some random apocalypse. That way you can't prepare properly, but you know something's going to change.
Something big is going to threaten. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And so, what are the sort of unique features of all your games, of your DMing style, the things that you try to draw out, you try to enhance?
So, that's I have a lot of specific homebrews. I kind of have to because the urban fantasy aspect makes things a little more some certain rules that are applied, like cell phones hold magic for you. So for those that use spells, your phone can actually have a certain amount of memory data to pull in your spells. I utilize a lot of specific mechanics, such as I use a patron system. So you can actually barter to gods, deities, or otherworldly beings to gain more power, comprehension. And there's an actual behind the scenes counter I use based on actions and behaviors that could determine which gods or which beings will influence. So I have a lot of strong realm breaking influential counters involved with that, as well as a certain level of high tech mechs that I've been play testing and balancing. So there's the options are endless depending on which way the adventure goes, but it's tends to be a very large set of custom built stat subclasses available, weapons, armor, mechs, vehicles, spells, and just resources, including my special fate system in which you can actually barter with the elder god, the game master, to have more power at a consequence. Players can sacrifice their class features, health points, they can sacrifice ability scores, they can sacrifice spell slots, and not just temporarily, but permanently change the very foundation of your character to get an outcome you want, because that's how the game works. Bend your reality to create the future you desire.
Cool. We have a question, which is, when's that Deep Breath getting published? Is the castle like an ultimate playtest?
Oh, it's on the docket. I actually don't have a hard like date set for it. I've been working through the playtest a lot, trying to build a full comprehensive setting guide, but also it takes more than just getting the setting. It's a lot of restructuring and reflavoring the not the core of D&D, but the flavor. Things like rogue, paladin, and wizard become names that don't translate well to full contemporariness, so it's just taking some time, but the castle is the ultimate playtest to make my version of urban D&D possible, which right now we've been working on calling Downtown Dragons to keep the D&D for you to enjoy. So my hope is that sometime next year I'll have a better idea. With one D&D coming in, that's actually a big aspect to see what's compatible, because I want to ensure that it has longevity to tell urban stories and to feel closer to me as a Black American, that my history is more urban than most individuals with a long standing heritage. And I feel like that's important to tell those kind of stories and have that environment.
Hmm. Let me ask you about your sort of approach to D&D, your approach to gaming, your philosophy of D&D. For example, like what are you what do you think is the most important or key uh, element or of the D&D gaming experience? Like, what are you trying to deliver for your players that you think makes the D&D game great?
So, um, when I think about this, I try to go back to that moment that I feel a lot of people share. at some point in life, either as a kid or even late in life when you make it in adulthood. There's a period of time when you watch a movie, a TV show, a cartoon, an anime, read a book. There's a moment when you're so engrossed in a story that something happens and your mind creates a sense of familiarity and a second home. A big part of Deep Breath's world is called Hariath, a Welsh word for a sense of homesickness for a world that never existed or a place you've never been.
Mhm.
I
Amazing.
want people to come to my table and walk away feeling like they've been at home. I want them to feel like the world they live, the characters that have existed, the experience helps them develop more as a person. So my adventures tend to have some moral ambiguity, to have some social conflicts, things that are in the real world, but exaggerated to give you the power to stand against it because I want more people to walk away from games feeling empowered rather than just having a story to tell. I want them to talk about the experience, the emotional growth, the togetherness, the family, the sense that I get whenever I go back home to my mom and I'm like, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while, but like this is always a home for me." I want people to say like my table is a home they want to come back to at some point.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's so beautiful, and it's so synchronizes so well with what we're trying to do at D&D at a Castle, which is really create a community and create a home and create a comfortable place where people feel themselves. And I feel like we get that from people a lot. We get people. I've had people tell me, this is the place I feel the most comfortable. This is the place I feel like I'm with my people. I found my new family and my community. It really is magical that way. And I'm wondering, in terms of the game and your game's ability to deliver that, how does the castle setting and the format of D&D in a castle, the sort of 4-day retreat, all inclusive, exclusive, isolated, in a castle, all the aspects of D&D in a castle, the community aspect, how do all of those relate to the game and the game you're trying to create?
I think it provides not just I want to say immersion, but there's something deeper than that. Using that same idea that I want to create a second home for players is I have home games, I run online games, I run a lot of paid games, and they are incredibly enjoyable. I do know that like these games are a break for people. They're like I look forward to this Wednesday game because it's like the one day of the week that isn't bogged down with my day job. And I think what happens at the castle is all the things that would normally burden them in the back of their mind are removed by the end of the first day. They don't have to go back home and wash their dishes. They don't have to worry about, oh, I need to vacuum my car. They don't have to worry about managing their life at home or their job. They get to just be themselves. And a big deal with me is I'm very inspired by the way of anime storytelling, or more specifically, the ability of the childlike enthusiasm to battle the stress of the world, knowing that like the adults in most anime are the bad guys because they're stressed by life and they're the villains. But when we can play D&D and we don't have to worry about the burdens of being adults, then we can be that child inside and explore the game at a deeper level that I think is hard to attain otherwise, because it's just 3.5, 4 days of being around the people that you bond with, exploring an adventure with a DM that wants to communicate with you in a room where you make jokes, you laugh, you cry, you bond. And at the end of each day, you don't have to worry about the burdens. And so when it's all done, it becomes a core memory that even though it's been like 3, 4 days, it feels like you've been gone for like a year in this like amazing experience. And it's a refreshing thing. Like I love it every time I get to run it because I feel that same relief of burden to tell stories without thinking, oh, by the way, I have to make sure we stop at 9 o'clock because I have to go to work in the morning, or they have to go to bed
Babysitter
to
has to
go to
come home, or yeah.
the babysitter or things. It's
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of you as a DM, as a gamer, as a storyteller, how did you get into D&D? What's your backstory? Tell us your origin story, Jayden.
My origin story, I have it's a two-part origin story because I got to tabletop role-playing games late in life, but I've been doing role-playing early. Since I was in elementary school. I remember I used to write short stories for like, our language arts class, but I love writing anyway. and I would share my stories with a few of my friends, and we would have these like role play things. Like some kids play like I'm Superman, you're Batman, I have laser vision. But I would do that with my friends and I would design rules. Like you can only have one or two powers. You can have one that's super, one that's mechanical. And I would make these rules even when I was in like fifth grade. And then I got into middle school and that didn't stop. And I kept refining that story and my mechanics. So by the time I reached high school, me and my friends were doing like role play forums where we're doing like chats on these characters, building their story and interacting. And we would do turn-based experiences because I played video games. It
Mhm.
goes as my mom played video games when I was in the womb. So I was destined to be a gamer because that was the only way she would get me to not move, and her stomach was her biggest point. And so I continue with this through high school, wanting to tell stories with my friends. And I've always been one that loved talking and telling stories and building worlds and providing a playground for people to play. And then I ended up turning 18. I ran for mayor of my hometown, and I love just the public speaking energy. And just we kept doing stuff, me and my friends, like this. It wasn't until college, my sophomore year, that me and a bunch of friends were like, we can make a video game club at school and count it as extracurricular as an excuse to just play video games because we were just trying to cheat the system.
Yeah,
Um,
of
my
course.
law professor was our advisor, and he was like, technically, you can't do just video games. You have to do all kinds of games, including board games. And we're like, fine. And he was like, hey, by the way, there's this tabletop role playing game. At the time, he was like, we have Pathfinder, Shadowrun, and D&D. And I was like, what's all those? I don't actually know. So we started in Pathfinder. I was like, oh, that's how tabletop games work. Then we went to Shadowrun. And I was like, oh, this is like my vibe. And then D&D had this structure that I was like, this is interesting. And then it became an addiction. I was like, I need to play more of this. So our gamers guild started to meet more often. And then I started finding out there were like hobby shops that did this. And I was like, why did no one tell me about this until
Right?
I'm in my early 20s? I'm like, and then I'm like going to game shops. And then I started finding out about an online community. And I'm like, oh, this is big. This is a thing. How
This
do
is
I do more of this?
I love it.
And it took off from there. I found out there was a way to tell stories with friends, and there were other people who also wanted to tell story. And during my early 20s, like a lot of that time after I finished college was spent trying to be an actor. I did films in like San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area. I did a little bit of work in LA. I would try to work on directing and writing. And I realized I just want to tell stories. And then D&D was like, you don't need to have a whole production. You just need a table, maybe, some dice, maybe, but some friends willing to tell a story. And I was like, I found my home.
That's so awesome. That's so great. We've got a couple of your players tuning in here. Jayden's Downtown Dragons setting is so unique and fun when it comes to exploration and world building. Love that. Playing with Jay at his tables is always such a great experience. How many tables have you run at D&D in the Castle, Jay? I'm trying to think.
I
Two?
I have run four full campaign tables now.
Yeah.
One, two, yeah. This I believe it should be four campaign tables now.
So a bunch of times,
Yeah, and a few one shots that I ended up running during the early experience during like the down days. I was still there. I would help with the one shots when I was
Right.
volunteering and helping, and then I started doing some more on my off time in between because I just love running games. So yeah, four campaigns, and I think well over 10 different tables
Mhm,
altogether.
mhm. And have you ever had new players at your table?
It's always been new players. I have had zero
I mean, like
repeat.
people who are new to the game of D&D or new
Oh,
to role playing.
I've had one time I had a like relatively new, like they've heard of it and they said their family played it, but
Mm.
they never really got a chance to get too into it, but they were excited to like give it a shot. And they were enamored with the level of anime references because they're like, I may not know D&D, but I know anime. And they were like, I'm gonna try to do an anime move. And I'm like, good, that's how
Good,
you
'cause
get
I
advantage.
know all about that.
And that was a big deal because like I feel like it bridges the gap for people that may not be into the classic D&D lore or the essence of D&D's traditional
Mhm.
fantasy. They know Super Saiyan Kamehamehas. They know that you got to name your moves. They know you've got to have personal monologues, and friendship is magic. And that player was like, I'm leaning into all this. I remember they even got up out their table and all their moves they would actually try to physically do. And he's
I
like, yeah, I
love
spin around and I do this. And I was like, yes, you understood the assignment.
you got the brief. Nailed the brief. Nailed the brief. And how do the other players react to having somebody new at their table?
They I think what was most beautiful was when they like when it was addressed on like when I first did it, I didn't ask people how long they played. It wasn't a question I thought of asking, but they did bring up that they were new. The rest of the players were immediately like, "Don't worry, we will guide you." And so the person next to the new player was like kept their eyes on the character sheet. And then they were just helping on those moments whenever we're having like a combat and you could tell the person got nervous before I even had a chance to help them. The players like, well, you have this is your spell, this is your spell. They work like this and this, but you could do this or you could do anything. And I think it was really great because they were all trying to give that new player spotlight energy as often as possible so they can feel comfortable in it. And I think that's what made it so great is this new player felt like the protagonist the whole time, even when like, I don't know what to do. They're like, neither do we. And that's what I think what made it great.
Nobody knows what to do.
Nobody
I
knows. We're all flailing about.
when you hear sometimes questions, is I'm not, I've never played before, or I've just started out. I don't think I'm experienced enough to do this or enjoy it. And I think actually, it's sort of like when you have, and we talk about this sometimes, even I always bring this up with the DMs, that subject that nobody will ask you about, like there's a subject you always want to talk about, and everybody else is like, okay, you can stop talking now. Nobody cares about this subject. And then you get to D&D in a castle, and when there's a new player, suddenly everyone is allowed to talk about the thing they love to talk about that nobody ever wants to hear about. So then that new player gives them permission to talk ad nauseum about D&D. That's all they want is
Yes.
someone to let them
Oh,
talk about D&D. And I feel like those new players actually are really prized. And I know I've heard from DMs, multiple DMs at the castle, no, they fight over I want the new player. I want the new player. It's like a special privilege to play someone's first game and give them share that passion. It's about sharing that passion and enthusiasm.
oh
So
yeah. It's one of those things that I think D&D nerds particularly are like, I know so much about this, and as soon as I get one chance, just one
right?
chance to be that expert, I'm gonna info dump you and we're gonna become best friends, and you don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's really wonderful. So Jay, we're coming up to the end of our time. In an elevator pitch, who is your game for? Who would love your game? Invite people to your game. Tell them in your elevator pitch of what your game is, and invite people to come to
Welcome to Downtown Dragons.
it.
This world is consumed in magic and technology unified at the best they can, where skyscrapers and cars stand side by side with giant trolls and spell slinging wizards, where the adventure is epic, but you are greater than that. Where you can experience adventures that are groundbreaking, realm shattering, world ending, and you stand at the forefront building your future or severing it if that's the choice you make. Whether or not you've ever played before or an expert veteran, if you experience intense combat or you like the crunch or role play, this fits in the middle of all that, giving you all the storytelling famous in JRPGs and anime and the ability to make you the center focus in being the best you can be while immersing you in an experience that you can take an emotional growth and emotional intelligence and a second family with you forever.
Amazing. Beautiful. Jay, I'm sold. I love it. If this sounds like your kind of time, or you just want to hang out in a castle for a week, come join us at D&D in a Castle this August 11 to 15 at Mohican Castle, USA. You can find out more at dndinacastle.com. There's also a live chat on the website that you can where you can ask all your questions, even set up a phone call. We'll give you a call and no obligation to answer all your questions. And it's a real person. We are not sophisticated enough for bots. We just have human beings answering your questions the best we can. So reach out to us, find us. Check out Jay on our website there that you can read all about him on dndinacastle.com. Thank you so much, Jay, and we look forward to seeing you this August at the castle.
It's gonna be epic. It's vacation beyond imagination, as they say.
Thanks so much.